So, just got back from the Draycote Dash. Let's talk about realistically what went into our performance at the Draycote Dash and why handicap racing may or may not be a good thing for you and what you need to keep your eyes open to. I'll play back a little bit of the video from the event so that you can make your own minds up about the tactics and how valid the result is. So starting off, this is just the sail out to the race area, kind of getting our eye in for a few of the angles on the course. And this is really critical for your performance in a handicap race. So to give you the full context, this is the Draycote Dash. It is a large handicap race or event with some shorter kind of fleet start races on the Saturday, four fleet start races on the Saturday. Then on the Sunday is a pursuit race, so you start in order of speed from slowest to fastest, with the fastest boats chasing down the slowest, whereas the first day is all done on start at the same time and then they correct your finishing time. So there's actually a blog on the dinghy racing channel of the first day of the fleet races, corrected time races, and this is from the Sunday, which was really breezy pursuit race. And this is a pre-start, but I'm just going to jump ahead and bumpers into the racing, which is actually joins at the first tack on the first beat. So going to talk to you a little bit about the strategy and tactics that we used and a little bit about the relevance of handicap racing, or my opinions on the relevance of handicap racing. So spoiler alert, we were doing quite well in this event. We're actually second after the first day, and this is the pursuit race. We were a few points behind Sam Pascoe in his Mozzy Skiff, so needed to put a few boats between ourselves and Sam. Now, I'll be frank with you, I don't actually think handicap racing is always that good a test of one's sailing ability. And this comes from where the handicaps are derived. So it's got to be said that handicap is the average performance. It's empirical data, so measured data. So it's the average performance of the average sailor sailing the average boat within that class around a average handicap race. Now that performance may not be realistic for what the boat is capable of in extremes of conditions or even extreme designs of that boat. So there's a lot of variety there in terms of how accurate these handicaps really are. When I say extreme conditions, I mean different boats have different performance curves. They work well in certain wind speeds and certain wind angles. And depending on the course you get given and the conditions for that day, how breezy it is, the chances of you doing well or performing to your handicap can really vary. So in our case, in the 800, when it's kind of 50 knots at our ballpark, we can get planing up and downwind, then we should be able to perform to our handicap. Some trickier aspects to that is when it's gusty and shifty. It makes it a bit harder because our boat is less manoeuvrable and more tricky to manoeuvre. Bit freestyling there in the footage. So yeah, a few caveats in there. Nevertheless, this top of the course was really, really gusty, just along the dam wall between these outer marks. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that and what I think has a reasonably accomplished amateur sailor about how relevant I think this racing is and the results from it. Back to the racing you're seeing on your screens, and this is the pursuit race on the Sunday. It was really quite breezy. It doesn't look at the top of the course where we're going on there, but it was kind of high teens to mid 20s. Heard some bar rumours of there being gusts up to 30 knots, which I think is possible. I'm not sure if it was the norm on the day, but possible we had some big gusts. But the course was this kind of, it was kind of really a clockwise loop around the lake, except we had two of these, one of which are on at the moment, two of these incursions to the middle of the lake. This one was kind of on a run, but it was a lopsided run, so I spent most of it on starboard jibe, a little jibe here just onto port, literally for a handful of seconds, just get out this jibe and then instantly have to go back onto starboard again. Not the tidiest jibes, but it is, I promise you, despite the look of the flat water, pretty windy day. And we started last in the race, 4 minutes behind the Mustos, and we had to put 3 boats between ourselves and Sam. I think this was actually probably on the windier side of when our peak performance to handicap is. Skiffs do get a little tricky to handle as it gets windier. But there's a few other things. As I said before, really, when it's light winds and you're not planing, then you don't get the full performance of a skiff. But equally, when it gets really windy, what happens is you start to lose areas of the windrows where you can really sail through. And this is on the beam reaches and what's called the depth zone. So effectively, you've just got too much power to sail the boats in those regions, and as it gets windier, that depth zone expands either side of the beam reach, and what you have to do is, even on a 2-sail reach, you end up kind of zigzagging along these 2-sail reaches, avoiding the depth zone. So you have to, if you get hit by a gust, you have to take it downwind, get blown below the rum line, and then you have to pick your moment for when you think you can flick through a beam reach, through the depth zone, bring the boat back up, and then start sailing to the mark. And you almost have ley lines on reaches either side of this depth zone, and that starts to cost you a bit of distance, and distance is obviously key in a pursuit race. It's who can sail the longest in the allotted time. So you start to lose out in these top end conditions. That's putting aside the challenges of sailing a tricky boat skiff. Just a bit of a dodgy tack there. Jib came uncleated. Tactics on the course. This we tacked pretty soon after that mark, and I will open up the chart and show you where we are on the lake, and zoom in to this. So I think we tacked probably too soon here, and probably could have carried on further to this corner, and that would have brought us kind of up on the port ley line with a bit more fetch from the top of the lake and a bit more cleaner wind. As it was, we tacked relatively soon and came in on this ley line, and we still had 180 meters to go on the starboard ley underneath this shore, which was quite an up and down part of the lake. So yeah, we kind of refined our tactics as we went through the race. Bit of a splash there, to better get around or limit the time we spent at the periphery of the lake in the gustier conditions, which were quite challenging in the 800. Bit of discussion just on board there about where Sam Pascoe is, keeping an eye on him when we're going to catch him. So like I said, we need to put a few boats between him. And as we're watching this back, I was actually really pleased with our performance on the Sunday. I thought we sailed incredibly well to the handicap. finished second in the pursuit. I think a 420 would have beat us, but they lost out in a protest. But yeah, it was a 470 and 420 who were ahead of us on the water. And really, those boats excel in a proper strong breeze. And like I just explained, we were really battling with a death zone on the reaches and putting in a lot of extra distance that way. I actually think the Saturday, we got a string of seconds on the Saturday and a black flag, and Sam really nailed that day with 3 firsts and a 4th. That was a day we really needed to get some wins if we were to challenge. And yeah, I think what happens in the pursuit races, we just ran out of boats to overtake, really, to put between us and Sam. We overtook him with a good kind of 10 minutes left to race, but we only had a few more boats to overtake at that point, and the 470 and 420 were pretty stretched out in front. So, you know, we overtook as many boats as we could, but there just weren't that many boats left in between us and Sam, so we lost out by a point in the overall. The Saturday, honestly, I think we did pretty well. Obviously 3 seconds, and black flag was a bit of a shame because we're actually talking to the RWA. They were filming a vlog for us, which is up online, to go on the RWA channel, and we're talking to them, and then the 3 minute went up. We sailed back towards the start, but we got black flagged at the 1 minute. So we weren't over at the go, but we just got black flagged as we were sailing back from chatting to the camera boat. So that was a little bit unfortunate. We just took our eye off the ball there. But sailors do like a GPS tracking and replay, and had a look, and I think that at the time I thought that was probably quite a good race, but looking back at the tracker, I think Sam would have beat us in that race anyway, so probably not the end of the day. But yeah, I think one of the things to point out about handicap racing is, you know, it's not only the differences between the performance curves of the boat, but actually, because you've got faster and slower boats completing the courses in different times, you're actually racing at different times, and you have different possibilities in terms of the environmental conditions you face, which may not always be fair. So in this big pursuit race, we started 50 minutes after the toppers. So that's, well, first of all, it's 50 minutes less of exhausting conditions to race in. But if the conditions change in that time, then that affects how you perform. An example of this was from the Saturday. So in the last race on the Saturday, we were actually leading Sam by a couple of minutes after the end of the 3rd lap, and that would have been enough at that point to win that race. We got through the line just before 35 minutes, so they sent us round for another lap. We did 4 laps in that last race. Sam and the other Mustos got through just after 35. I think they stopped there, held them on 3 laps. Unfortunately, whilst we were doing the last lap, the wind dies, and we have been lapping in about just under 12 minutes, but that last lap took us almost 13. That affected our average lap time, and we ended up losing out to Sam, whereas if we'd finished at 3 laps, we would have won that race and won the event overall. So yeah, kind of an example of how in handicap racing, you know, beyond your control, things like that can happen. Really steaming along here, 20 knots. This is where we hold the kite a little bit past where we should, past the last mark, and just zoom in on this so you can see. So we hold the kite past this mark, and kind of probably should have dropped a bit earlier to come up onto the reach. Chatting away too much to you. Yeah, I think you got to be philosophical about some of these vagaries of the scoring and how it works out in the overall results. The flip side is, I think Sam in the Mozzy Skiff did exceptionally well to get I think a 4th in the pursuit. Like, we had it all on in our 800, and that's with 2 people on board to divvy up the tasks on these reaches. With the Mozzy Skiff, must be super hard on these on these death zone reaches to manage everything yourself. You know, I was pleased that we were the only skiff not to capsize, but yeah, quite frankly, they were probably on the limit of what you can really get their boat round the course in, whereas we were still kind of pushing it for speed most of the time. So we had overtaken this Mozzy skiff here, but they kind of stick with us all the way down this next leg. It's got some quite good footage of them chasing in behind us. So yeah, you know, how relevant is this handicap racing? And you know, if I've just said the results aren't necessarily completely representative of your own personal performance for several reasons. You know, the characteristics of the boat you're sailing, the environmental conditions of the time in which you're racing, and there's also just the fact that different boats actually test different skills. So how can you compare with one number? You know, how good is my trapezing compared to a laser sailor's hiking? They're two different skills, so to compare them with a number on speed, is that really fair at all? Well, probably not. But the answer to all this is, you know, who cares? It gets a load of boats on the water. It's which is a great thing to do at this time of year, or at a club where you struggle to get a critical mass to hold a kind of a class racing. You can get more people on the water by doing handicap racing. It's still fun. You still get that adrenaline rush of, you know, being in a race, chasing other boats, being chased by other boats, and that very kind of raw feeling of racing you get regardless of, you know, what the result sheet says or how the results are worked out. And that is just fun. Like, it was really fun in this pursuit race, chasing down the whole fleet, and hopefully it was just as fun from them being chased. And yeah, you know, we finished, well, second after the 420 was disqualified. Does that mean we sailed the second best on the day? Probably not, hard to tell, but the execution of it was pretty fun. I'm old enough and wise enough, been around the block enough times to understand that about the racing, and even got to the point where I can kind of just adjust my expectations depending on the conditions and analyse my own performance and ask myself how pleased I am about how I actually raced. And looking at this event, honestly, the Saturday, you know, I've said we had a bit of bad luck maybe with that fourth race and having to do the extra lap. But I think the rest of the day, I don't think we executed like amazing well in those kind of, like, you know, perfect conditions. 15 knots, you should be like right on it, never really making a mistake on the ley line, nailing every call. And you know, we've had a bit of a break from sailing the boat back end of this year, so a bit rusty on that. But so yeah, in hindsight, I'm probably more pleased about our performance in this big breeze on the Sunday than about our performance on the Saturday, even though the results are the same. We came second in all those races, so that's how I kind of look at things. I think there is a pitfall though for sailors who are newer to racing and are improving quite quickly, and sometimes these kind of nuances or grey areas in the handicap racing can mask their improvement, and you could come disheartened. You know, you feel like you're improving, you get it better, the results are getting better, and then suddenly you have a month where your results go backwards. And actually what that could be is just the month where the wind's not as strong, and therefore the boat you're racing isn't going to perform as well on handicap. You know, and if you've only been racing for a year and you've not got a big back history of kind of results to look at and a good knowledge of the handicap system, you could find that quite frustrating because the results aren't tying up with your kind of perceived progress that you're feeling in the boat. You know, you feel like you're getting better, you're making better decisions, but it's not showing up in the results. So I think the big danger of the handicap isn't that people at the front of the fleet don't get an accurate result, because at the end of the day, you know, the people at the front of the fleet, if they care enough about accurate results, they'll go out and they'll race each other in a proper fleet race and find out how good they are that way. And I think majority of the sailors who are switched on to these things, been around the block a few times, know the score with these handicap. And, you know, you went to the event knowing the handicap you're going to race against, you should have a good idea about some of these kind of quirks to handicap racing. And it's all kind of part of the fun. It adds another element of look into it, and it's about participating. And if you're lucky, if you sail well and your boat has its day and the environmental conditions match up for when you're putting in your performance, then it's a great feeling to get a good result off the back of it, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I also really like these particular events just because it kind of takes you out of your comfort zone. We do a lot of windward leeward racing on the circuit, and if we just went out practicing at a club, honestly, we'd probably just end up practicing going upwind and downwind, tacks and jibes. And, you know, on the face of it, that may be good preparation for your nationals where you're doing racing in a similar fashion. But I find pushing yourself to these events, having lots of different boats around to avoid, navigate through, and also a variety of different types of legs, wind angles to sail, kind of allows you to, nasty tack, allows you to problem solve a little bit more and kind of improves your general sailing. And, you know, you never know in a championship when it's going to become important. Wind drops, a leg wind shifts, a leg skews, suddenly you're just doing a tight reach to the finish, and you'll think back to times like this where you've raced in certain similar circumstances. I think socially the events are good as well, because you obviously it's multi-class, so it's, you know, nothing against the 800 folk, I love them dearly, but yeah, it's nice to meet other people and who sail other boats and get a different perspective. A lot of what we do is sailing isn't just about the on-water side, but about the off-the-water social. That's important to me as well. So just coming in, tacking there, and I think that's taken us through for a lap. So I'll just jump us ahead to the downwind and I can give you a few conclusions. This is rounding the top again, I'll just let that play in the background. So, do I think handicap races are relevant? Well, yeah, I think they're an integral part of the racing scene, and they can be invaluable for improving your sailing. They can be incredible fun, and yeah, me and Guy plan to use this Sailjuice Winter Series as an important part of our preparation for next summer. That said, if you're new to racing, then yes, they can be great because it's a great experience to get out. But if you're not getting or not seeing the improvement in performance through handicap racing that you might have expected, then yeah, you know, just think about it a bit more, have a look at the performance of your boat, and maybe be a bit philosophical about the result. Me and Guy had a cracking weekend, came second overall at this Draycote Dash out of 110 boats, but I'm sure at Blue Mary, Tiger Trophy, if we get some light winds, then you'll be likely to see us much further down the results. And just as this hasn't made us greater sailors, a bad result there, I won't knock my confidence either. Right, I hope you've enjoyed this little watch through, and yeah, take care and see you around.